Hello and welcome to, gosh, it's been a while, another edition of StitchCraft, where I'm going to attempt to throw something together using MongoDB Stitch. Yeah, it's been a while. I don't know if many of you know what developer advocates do. I have been at a lot of hackathons, a lot of events lately. So I was at MHacks and Boilermake and MHacks and CalHacks and Hop Hacks and pretty much anything you can put in front of hacks. I was probably there. And then also I was at um, Node, Node plus JS Interactive in Vancouver, where I found out that I have allergies to Vancouver. It's a lovely place. It was just not great for me. So let's get into it. I'm going to switch views here. All right. So like always, the previous episode is now available. You can find that on the MongoDB blog. So if you remember, if you were here from last time or if you watched the recorded videos, we started looking into AWS Rekognition to analyze and tag uploaded images. So I have a short little blog post here with a nice code snippet, and then you can do a link to the YouTube recording. So the easiest way to find all of these on the MongoDB blog is just to go to mongodb.com/blog, and then over here in the little search box, you can type in StitchCraft, and that will pull up all of mine. Fun. All right, so what are we going to do today? We're going to be building an app that will read aloud text in an image. So I had some fun today going around the office taking pictures of different images with text. And what I'd like to be able to do is upload those photos and then have my application read what's on them. So to do that, I'm going to be using a couple AWS services. The first one is we're going to go back to using Rekognition, which it has a detect text function in it. And so we're going to use that to pull the text out of the image that we upload. And then I'm going to take that text and I'm going to pass it into AWS Poly. And Poly will allow us to synthesize speech. And so we can pass in a word or a phrase, and it will spit back out audio of like a computer voice reading it. And so that's what we're going to do, and we're going to do that using a React app. So first, let's go in and set up our cluster. So I don't need this anymore. You've already seen it. So I have my cluster here. You can go to cloud.mongodb.com and sign up for a free one. I'm still using my M0 free tier. So this is the same cluster that I was using when we did the Pickstream application. So I'm just going to go over to Stitch Apps. And you can see that I've got, can you see that? Yeah, you can see that. I've got two applications. I've got the one that I do all my testing with to make sure that this stuff is actually going to work. And then I've got the Pickstream one. And so I'm just going to create another one for this application. And we're going to start off StitchCraft. And I'm going to call it read to me. The good thing about names is you can always change them later. This is all good. We're going to deploy it to Virginia. It's a great place to put data. And we're going to go ahead and create it. And so this is going to be a pretty basic app because I want to focus on using the AWS services. So once this is created, I'm going to do a couple things. I'm going to turn on anonymous authentication because we're not really doing anything where we need to know what the user's doing. We're basically going to upload a file, process it, and spit out the sound. And hopefully you can, I don't really know how the sound works on this, but hopefully you can hear it. All right, so turning on and on this authentication is really easy. It's right here in the getting started, so we can do it here. Turn that on, or you can go into users and providers, and you can turn it on right here just by hitting edit and flipping the switch. So that's it for our auth. Like I said, very simple. We're not going to use like Google Auth or Facebook Auth. It's not really needed for right now. We just want to be able to authenticate to the service. And then the second thing that we need to do is set up our AWS service that we're going to be using. And so if we go into services, you can see that we have no services because it's a fresh application. We're going to add a service, and we're going to use this AWS service that we've used before. And I'm just going to call it AWS. And then we need to give our access key ID and secret access key. And you can get these by going into your AWS panel and setting up a user and then giving it the proper permissions. So I had to go in and give it access to Rekognition and to Poly for this to work. So give me just a second. I'm going to switch over to private mode, and I'm going to put in my access key and secret. Access key and secret, because I don't want anybody to take any of this. Don't go for a joyride with my account. Cool. All right, I can switch back over. And we're back. And I'm going to hit add service. Cool. No, thank you, LastPass. That was great. So now we have our service created, but to use it, we need to actually create some rules. So my way of going about it is I create a rule for each service I plan to use. So let's call the first one Rekognition. We're going to add the rule. And we need to go in here and we need to allow certain actions. So right now we don't have any access to any actions. So we can add the action, we can go in, we can find the Rekognition API here. And we could give it access to all actions, but really all I'm going to be using is the action called, wait for it, detect text. We could go even further and say only allow it when these fields are happening, these events are happening, but we don't really need to. So I'm just going to save this change. Cool, so we've got Rekognition. We also need to add one for Poly, so I'm just going to call this one Poly. We're going to add the rule. We're going to add an action, and we're going to find the Poly API. And the action that we are going to use is Synthesized Speech. Again, we could choose all actions, but this is the only one we're doing, and it's safer to just allow people only what we're going to use, in case anybody out there decides to do malicious things with my wonderful AWS credentials. Cool. So this, for the application that we're going to build, is all you need to do for Stitch. And I'm going to go to this screen because we're going to need this ID. So when we start building out our React application, we're going to need that ID. That's what's going to connect us to our Stitch application. Very easy. Okay, so let's talk about what the things that we need to do now. We're going to have to create a React app, and we're going to use create React app to do that. We're going to have to add the Stitch browser JS SDK. So that's what's going to allow us to connect to our Stitch application. It's going to be very easy to do. We're going to use npm to do it. And then we need to add an upload control. So this is what is going to allow us to select the file on our machine and upload it. And then once we get that on there, we need to pass the file to Rekognition and get the results from the detect text. And we are going to then pass the result text to Poly, and that into the synthesized speech. And then that's going to pass us back an audio file, and we need to play the audio using the audio I almost spelled my name, audio tag. And so that's what's going to allow us to do all that. So these are kind of the steps that we're going to do. So let's go ahead and switch over and start doing it. So I have a clean space here. With my Stitch apps, if you've looked at any of my source code, I kind of like to create a project folder first. So let's go ahead and make what I call this StitchCraft read to me. So this will be the outer one. So let's go into that. Cool. So we'll go into here, and this allows me to, I can do Stitch app, and I can hold an exported version of the Stitch app. It's really nice if people want to be able to deploy this into their own instance. So I export it as a template, and then I create little scripts that allow you to just create the app in your thing. So it's really handy for like if any of our solutions architects want to use this as a demo going forward. So we have that, and then what we'll do is we'll create another one called Web UI, and that's going to hold our React application. That's nice if I wanted to come back and do like a React Native app, because that's just a different front end, so I can just do a different folder that enters into that, but it still uses the same Stitch application. And to create that, we're going to use npx. If you're not familiar with npx, it's like npm, but it downloads the library or the executable and then executes it, and then it's done. So with Create React App, they're constantly putting out new versions of it. And so to make sure that you're using the newest version whenever you generate this, it's best to just do npx and call it instead of trying to globally install it and then keep up with all the updates. So I'm going to do npx, it's Create React App. And then I'll just give it the name. And for this, I'm just going to give it Web UI because it will actually create a folder. And so let's run that and hope that the internet is quick. So you can see that it's actually installing the Create React app, and then it's creating a new one. And it says it will take a couple minutes. So it is installing React, React DOM, and React scripts. And then once that's done, we'll go into that folder and we'll make sure that it's actually a working application. You see we have 3 viewers on. Hi, viewers. It's taking a while. This is where you would take a sip of your coffee, or you would go get more coffee, or tea. There's a lot of waiting. The good news is a lot of the beginning stuff we've already done in the very first episode where we were uploading information to S3. So it's going to be pretty easy to pull over the file upload app that, the file upload app control that we created for that and just go ahead and use that so we don't have to kind of reinvent the wheel there. All right, so that is created. So I'm going to cd into Web UI, and I'm going to run npm start just so I can get this up and going. So it's now using Create React App version 2. So it's going to look a little different if you're used to using version 1. And we are starting the development server. Okay. So great, we have a very simple little React app. Wonderful. And let's go ahead and open up another tab. And I'm going to switch over into VS Code. So I'm just going to do code dot into this. And great. So let's make that bigger. And let's make everything bigger. Can I do that? Let's see. How's my preview look? Let's go one bigger. Sure. We'll make that work. All right, so everything is really big. I don't have to wear my imaginary glasses. Let's go on in and you can see app.js here. Um, I am going to actually get rid of everything in the header, including the header, because we don't need it. I'm just going to clear that out. And if I save it and go back over to, yeah, as you can see, it refreshed. So we're live loading, everything's working. Hello, Screen Looker 90. So there's nothing on the page. Very exciting. Let's go back and install some things. So let me make that bigger, so much bigger. Okay. So I guess if we were looking at our little checklist, we created a React app. Good for us. Let's go in and now we need to add the SDK. So we're going to want to install, so we'll do Mongo, nope, that's npm, said it right, didn't do it. Install MongoDB Stitch browser SDK. So we need that one because we're going to be using the AWS service. We also need to make sure that we install MongoDB Stitch browser services AWS. So we'll go ahead and get those installed. And exciting things, exciting things. How big did I make this thing? Okay. It's so big. It's very nice of it to just resize the whole window as I was doing things. Okay, so that's finished. Oh my gosh. Hold on, this window is very huge. Pull it back over here. All right, now it's too small. But you all can read it, so that's good. All right, so let's go back over to our app, and if we look inside package.json, we can see that the two packages are now there. So now we can go back into the app and start working with it. So let's add a constructor. So we're going to hook up everything to connect the client to the application. So I'm just going to add back in a constructor. Yes, thank you. And that takes props. And we are going to super the props because that's what you do. And I am going to put the app ID in here. So that's what we're going to need to go grab from over here. Back into our admin console, we're going to click the copy button and put it in here. So I'm going to use that in a bit. But what else do we need in here? For right now, we'll just leave it like that. And then we need to initialize the client. And to do that, we're going to put it inside the component did mount lifecycle event. So if you guys are, if any of you are familiar with that, we're just going to do component did mount, and it's not going to take anything. Okay, and so we need to set up a client. So I'm going to attach a client. And to do that, we should import what we just started using. So we're going to import from MongoDB Stitch browser SDK, we need Stitch. And because we're going to log in anonymously, we're going to need the anonymous credential. Well, I seem to like that. From MongoDB Stitch Browser SDK. Sweet. All right, so we're that far. So now we can do Stitch dot initialize default app client, and that takes wonderful, IntelliSense helping us out here. So that takes the client app ID, and we have stored that in this dot app ID. And so that will get us an instance of the Stitch client, which is great, which is what we need. So now that we have the client, and we need to log in, and that's as simple as going this dot client dot auth dot login with credential, and we're going to pass it a new anonymous auth credential, or not anonymous credential. And so this will initialize a client and then log in, which it will log in anonymously. For this example, it doesn't really matter. Okay, cool. So now we have a client we can use. Now we're logged in, but we're going to need access to our AWS service. So let's go in here and grab some things from that library that we imported. Also, just because we're not using the logo anymore, I'm going to get rid of this because it's all gray and unhappy that we're not using it. So we're going to import a couple things. We need our AWS service client, and we are also going to need AWS request from MongoDB services, browser services, AWS. Awesome. And so back down here, we are going to go ahead and create the instance of our AWS client. And how do I call that? Let's go back. Yeah. So do this.aws, and that is going to be equal to, so we got the client, and there should be a get service client, and we pass that a factory, and that's from the AWS service client dot factory. And then we give it the name of the service that we created, which should be AWS. It's really easy to go back and check that. If we look into services, AWS. Yes, and that is actually the name of it. So good for us. Good for me for remembering. And that's everything we need to hook up our Stitch app. So now we can start using it. So, and if we save it, there shouldn't be any errors in the page here. Nope, that's good. Let's open up. Oh, there is errors. Props is undefined. Let's see why it says that. Line 11. Don't know why I didn't put that. Okay, so line 11. It's probably a typo. Ah, it is a typo. Constructor takes props, and then we continue through there. And so this should go away. Actually, I'm going to take this screen, put it on my other desktop, so that way I can swoosh back and forth. Stick it with the rest of my stuff. All right, and great. Our request is defined and never used, but we're going to do that. So the first thing we need to do is be able to upload a file. Let's see. So I'm going to, inside the source, I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to call it components because I'm just going to do the upload as a component. I'm going to create a new one, and that's going to be file upload. Hey, Kirby.
I come into the thing.
Yeah, I don't know if they're gonna hear you.
How many viewers do you have right now?
I got 2 online.
Oh, cute.
It's
Am I allowed to provide
fine.
beer on camera, or is that frowned upon?
Oh, we don't drink here. I don't know what you're talking
Yeah, I have
about.
no idea what you're talking
Your
about.
root beer? No, your
Yeah,
root beer's fine.
It's actually a cream soda.
Oh, it's a cream soda?
Yeah.
Gosh.
And you know.
You got to come work
Way
at
too
tech
stressful.
places. But if you'd like to sponsor us, please email me.
It's Adrian at MongoDB.com. That's with a Y.
Yes, with a Y.
So what are you building?
So today we are building something that's using our AWS web services, the Rekognition and Poly. So I went around the office today and I took pictures of words. So like on the conference rooms, on snacks,
Oh,
and so I'm going to be able to
it's like a
upload it.
lens.
Yeah. So I'm
Cool.
going to be able to upload the photo and it's going to extract the text and then it's going to speak it to us, hopefully using a wonderful British accent.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
It's pretty slick. And this is recorded, so I can actually watch this later, right?
You can watch yourself.
Are you going to post this on the MongoDB blog so I can easily access said content?
That's right. MongoDB blog it up.
So horrible.
Yeah.
Have fun.
All right. So to make things go a little quicker, we're going to use the file upload code that I wrote before, but we'll quickly go through it. It's nothing really special. This is not the styled version, but basically we have a form with a submit. We have a label that says upload file. We've got a file input, and then a button that says upload. So this is just going to upload, and then on submit, it's going to run whatever function, or it's actually going to run the handle submit, which will grab the file and pass it to what we pass into a handle file upload. So yeah, not the exciting part of what we're doing today, but I do want to make sure. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and save that, and now we can import it into our app to use it. So let's do import file upload. Did I call it file upload over here. I called it file input over here. Let's just rename it. Code reuse is fun. It's prone to typos, lots and lots of typos. So we're gonna file input from components, file input. Cool. Now let's place it on the page. So this is gonna be a very fun little page that only has a file input. And let me make sure that I'm not, okay. Everything's so big everywhere because I've made this so big so everyone can see what I'm doing. Cool. So to put this on the page, we just do capital F, file input, and we have to give it a handle file upload. And this is going to be a function that we need to write. And so this is going to be this dot handle file upload. So we'll write that next so we can do something with these things that we're uploading. Okay, so this will give us a file and then we do something with it. Something that I like to do whenever we're uploading images is to just display the image. So I'm just going to use an image tag here, and I'm going to set a width because some of these images are really big. So if I set a width, it's going to constrain it and not make it like blow up on the screen. So it just, let's do 400. That will shrink everything down. And then we need to give it a source. And I'm going to keep that in state. So I'm going to say this dot state dot image. And I have to give it an alt tag or else it will yell at me. So I'm just going to say uploaded, because in an alt tag you can't, it will still yell at you if you put picture, image, pic, yeah, all of the things. We can fix it in post. All right, but I don't want to display it if there isn't an image. So let's go ahead and do this.state.image, and move that on the other. And if we put that in like that, we save, this will only display the image if there's one available. So let's go up here and start building kind of our default state. So this dot state is equal to, we know that we are going to have an image, and initially let's make that null. Cool. So we've got our input handler, or input, and an image to throw the stuff into. And so now we need this handle file upload function. So let's go down here. I like to put that after component didn't mount. And that actually is going to take, so this is going to look like really similar code to the first time we did this. So kind of cheating a little bit. Cool. So we got a file handler upload, and we need to bind that. So let's go ahead and do that. So this dot handle file upload is going to be equal to this dot handle file upload dot bind to this. Cool. There's a lot of different ways you could do that. You could have used like an arrow function inside there. Whatever makes you happy. So inside the file handler upload, one thing that I like to do is actually check to see if there is a file. So if there's not a file, I'm simply going to return. Cool. Now that we have the file, let's save it to state so we can display it. So an easy way to do that is to use the URL class in it. There's a function called create object URL, and so that will allow us to do this dot set state, and we want to update image to be our URL dot create object URL, and we're going to pass it the file. So it's going to take care of the file that's currently like in session attached to the doc, giving it a URL that can be displayed on the page. And so that really should be all that we need to do for that. Cool, so we're setting the state. So now we have gone through, we put a file input on the page, we can select a file, we can hit upload, and then it should just display it on the page. So this is as far as we've gotten. We haven't done any AWS services or anything like that. So let's go check it out. Cool. Let me bump it up. Okay, cool. So let's choose a file. I have all of these examples that I went around. My favorite one is this Cinnamon Toast Crunch. So I'm going to check the picture of our container of Cinnamon Toast Crunch. I'm going to open it, and I'm going to hit upload, and boom, it's on the page. So if we look, we've created an app, we've added the SDK, and we've added the upload control. Okay, so next we need to pass this file to Rekognition. The last time I did this, I saved the file into S3 so we could view it before, but you don't. And then we ran Rekognition on the image that was inside S3. But you don't need to do that. You can actually just pass the image directly to Rekognition. So let's do that. And that's going to be inside this handle function. So now that we have the file, we've updated the state so we can display the file. We need to do this thing where we convert it to a BSON binary object. And again, I'm going to use kind of a function that has already been like created. We've used it, I've used it in the last one, but basically it allows me to just pass the file that's being passed in this function in, and it does all the file reader stuff to pull out the bytes and to save it as a binary object, and then it returns it as a promise. So we can go back down here. Here's the fun function. And we can go back down here. So the first thing we need to do to be able to pass, to use this with recognition, is we do need to convert to a binary object. And that's going to take our file that's being passed in. And so that's going to return a promise. And am I just calling it result? Yeah, I'm bad at naming things. So result. So it's going to give us a result. And we're going to run some stuff on that. And like, it's not very interesting. I can console log it out, but let's do it. Why not? Console.log result, just so we can kind of see things happening as we step through. All right, now that we have this result, which is the image that we uploaded into a BSON object format that Stitch likes, we'll start to build our request. And so I've built this before. The first thing I'm going to do is figure out what the args are. So every request has args, so let's figure out those. And the way that I've been doing it lately, now in the underlying Stitch uses the Go library, but it matches pretty much for the SDK for JavaScript for AWS. So I can go in here and I can look for recognition. Recognition would be in the R's. So here's recognition, and I'm going to go down and I'm going to find the function that I'm going to use. So the method is detect text. So we'll go into that. There's like detects text in the input image and converts into machine readable text. Great. So here is kind of what the params that I'm calling args would be passed over. So that it does require an image object, and it really needs one or the other. So you need to pass it the bytes or pass it the location in an S3 bucket. So we're going to do this, and that's really all that it needs. So let's go over and so we need our image, and the image takes bytes. And that is our result. So it just works out that like that's exactly what it needed. So hooray. Okay, so now that we have our args, we can go through and we can build our requests. And so this is where we're going to use, up here we brought in this AWS request. So we're going to use that now. So we're going to create a request by using the request builder. So we can do new AWS request.builder, and all of these functions kind of chain on, and so we have to tell it what service we're using. So we can do .with service, and that service is Rekognition. And if you don't know where that came from, one thing that I always do is I go back in, and if you look inside the actions, it's going to be whatever you have right here. So it's lowercase recognition, and then the action that we're going to do next comes from here. So it's going to be capital T, capital D, capital T. So let's do, so we've done that, and then we do with action, and we're going to give that detect text, and cool, so detect text, and then we are going to give it a region. I've been told that it will default to US East 1, but I like to put it in just in case that's not a dash. Just in case there's somebody watching and they're using a different region, that's how you would set it. So now we can give it the args that we built up top. And we're just going to give it args. And then we can tell it to build. And so this is how it builds requests. And so you give it kind of all of the parameters and what it is, and you tell it to build. And then that will allow you to execute it. So we're going to go down here, and we're going to use our AWS service client that we created on component did mount, and we can simply run execute and give it this request. Spelling is hard. All right, so what this does is it executes the request and then it returns a promise. And so instead of doing it then there, I'm just going to go ahead and return this so that way we keep the promise chain pretty flat. And that's as far as I want to go with this part. So I'm going to add a then on there, and this is going to have a result. And let's do a function, and I want to console.log the result so we can see what it is that is coming back. And then we'll take it from there. Now, hopefully, there's still no errors. Great, there are still no errors. So let's do a choose file. We'll find our Cinnamon Toast Crunch. And we'll hit upload. And so, sweet, it did not work. Oh, ha 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 ha. How about detect text instead of detect text? I don't even know what that would do. All right, so we'll go back over here. This will refresh. We will choose it again, upload. There we go. We can see inside. Can I make this bigger in here? Yes. Okay, cool. So you can see the selected file. I'm just printing that out. This is it as a binary, by a BSON object. And then this is the result of the running recognition on it. So you can see that it comes back with text detections, and that's an array. So we have a confidence level, so it's pretty confident that it says Cinnamon Toast Crunch. That's good. So that's a line type, and then there is one for each word. So it will give you the line if there's text in a line, and then it will give you each word in the line. So depending on how you want to use it, I'm just going to look at the line, and I'm really only interested in the first entry. So for this example, for this demo, playing around with it. But if you look in here, you can see it gives you like the geometry of the box. So if you want to do something cool or like draw a box around each one, so it tells you the polygon, tells you the word, an ID, the confidence for each word. I have some on here where it's like, it's probably not a good confidence, like Twix, it didn't figure out the first T. So that's all of that. So let's kind of, let's get this, yeah. So let's go back over, and we really only want, so let's change this so it just shows the text detections. So it just spits out that array instead of doing the whole response. And so let's do const text is equal to result.text detections. Okay, so that is the whole array. I'm only worried about the first one, so I'm just going to grab index of 0. And from that, I'm only interested in detected text. Detected text, cool. And so let's do kind of a similar thing where we display the text that it gets onto the page. I'm going to console.log my text here. So let's console.log text, so that way we can just kind of see what's going on. And then to put it onto the page, we're going to use the state again. So we're going to do this dot set state, and we're going to update text to be text, so I can just kind of put it like that. Cool. So let's go down here. Actually, let's go up here where we set the image. Well, we're going to set text. The initial state of this is going to be an empty string. So let's do some cleanup there. And then here where we're setting the image, if we were to upload another file and it places the new image on, we'd probably want to clear out the text, because if I did something else, we don't want it to say Cinnamon Toast Crunch. So I'm going to use this space here to reset it back to its default state, which is empty string. Okay, cool. So let's go down here and put this on the page. Let's do the same thing where we only display it if it has a value. So we can do this.state.text. We can do an ampersand. We're gonna return, and let's do an h3, and it's just going to be this .state.text. Cool. So that should be all we need for that. Oh, it's so small, but it all fits on one line. Isn't that wonderful? Now let's go back over and see if that part works. I'm actually going to make this a little bit smaller too, since we have everything so increased in size. All right, so let's choose our photo again. Here's Cinnamon Toast Crunch. We're going to open. We're going to hit upload. And so it has uploaded. And boom. So we're now displaying it onto the page. Cinnamon Toast Crunch. So now we have, we're down to passing the result test to Polly. Okay, so this is where it gets fun, let me tell you. I played around with this yesterday to make sure that it would work before we went down this path. So let's go back over to our code. Now that we have this result, right here, we have our text result. We're gonna do something very similar to what we did with Rekognition. We're gonna build a new request. And so with our requests, we have args. So let's do const args is equal to an object, and go back over and find out what we need to pass for that. So let's go over here to Poly, and we'll find our method, which is Synthesized Speech. So this is kind of what the args look like. You got lexicon names, you've got an output format, sample rate, the text you're going to pass in, the text type, and the voice ID. So I've done some looking, and I figured out what the required, kind of the minimum required parameters that you need. So let's put those in. Cool. So you definitely need to give it an output format. Output format. And I'm going to use MP3. If we go back over here and we look, JSON, which I don't know how that's a good audio format, MP3, OGG Vorbis, and then PCM. Oh, look, it says which ones are required right here. Anyway, so we're going to use MP3. I think that's a format that most people are used to. We're going to give it text that it's going to use to synthesize the speech, and so that's just simply passing along our text. And then we have to give it a voice ID. And so what the voice ID does is it picks the voice that you're going to use. Do you want it to be male? Do you want it to be female? Are you having it synthesize like German text, because there's German voices versus English voices and versus Spanish voices? The one that I've picked, I'm going to pick an English-speaking voice, and his name is Brian. As it turns out, Brian is British, and so it's fun for me. So we're going to have a nice voice ID. These are the args that we need to synthesize the text that we just pulled out. So let's create the request. So we're going to do const request is equal to a new AWS Request Builder. just like last time. And we are going to start building the request. So the first thing I do is decide which service we're using, and that is Poly. Again, we can find that out by going into the console, clicking on the Poly. You can see the API here is Poly, and the action is synthesize text, or synthesize speech. It's hard to see because it's so small, but it's there. So let's go back over and put that information in. So we've got with service, and now we're going to choose the action. Nope, did it again. Action, and that's going to be synthesize speech. Whew, made it. Okay. Again, with the region, if you're just using US East 1, you can leave it out. I'm going to go ahead and put it in, just for anybody who's not in that region and looking at this code. And then we're going to give it our args that we built. No, args. Cool. And we're going to pass it in that args object, and then we're going to tell it to build. And so this is our request, and in a similar fashion, we are going to execute it using our AWS service client. Execute. We'll give it the request. Cool. And again, this is going to return a promise. So I'm just going to return that promise and keep my promise chain flat. All right. So let's see what we have here. So that's going to give us a result, and we're going to do something with it. What should we do with it? I think the first thing we need to do is console.logit, so we can see what we're working with. All right, let's go back over to our app. Everything still seems to be working well. That's nice. And find my Cinnamon Toast Crunch. We're going to open it. We're going to upload it. We're going to see what's going on. Did it? Oh, there we go. Cinnamon Toast Crunch. Cinnamon Toast Crunch. And as you can see, this is the results that we get back. So this is an audio stream, which is a binary. We got the content type, so it is coming back as MPEG. And the requested characters, which I believe is if you were to do this dot length 21, yeah. So it's just the length of the text that we passed over. It might be useful. I did not find it useful, but hey, why not? Okay, so what do we do with this? Yeah, look at all that. So we've got a buffer, which is an unsigned int 8-bit array. Sure. So we can figure out what to do with that. But to get it to play, we're going to use an HTML5 audio tag. So let's go ahead and put that onto the page. Let's do a similar thing where we're going to store this into the state, so that way it pops up. But we want to do a check. So let's do this.state.audio, and we're going to give it an audio tag. And I had to look all of this up, so this is fun. So it needs a ref, and we're going to call it this.audio ref. So we'll create that here in a few seconds. So it needs a ref, it needs a source, and so I want to be able to store that source in the state, so it's going to be this.state.audio. And because it's a source tag, it needs to be a URL. So we need to make sure that whatever's in there is a URL. And we're going to tell it to autoplay. And then we're going to put controls on it, so that way if you want to play it again, you can. But this will make it pop up and play, and then if you want to hit play, you can play it again. But that is the audio control, and Prettier has formatted it for me. and that's really all it takes. But what do we need to do to get that source in there? Let's go up and do some cleanup on our little maintenance on our state. So let's go ahead and put in an initial state for that. And that's going to be, I'm going to make it null. I think I could technically make it an empty string because it is a string. It's going to hold a string, it's going to hold a URL, but it doesn't matter. Null works. So up here, we also need to create our ref. So that's going to be this dot audio ref is equal to React dot create ref. I want to double check and make sure that's right. Yeah, let's do dot create ref. Boom. And so that's all we need to do to handle that ref. That ref would become in handy if we needed to programmatically access any of the pieces of that, since it's kind of an HTML5. But we're really not going to use it. I'm just putting it in there in case it decides to yell. We did use a ref on the file input control. So that's how we were able to access the programmatic parts of the file input. Exciting. Okay. And then let's go back here to our set state where we're kind of resetting things. And let's reset audio to null. And that way, whenever we upload a new file, it will hide that section as well. Because yeah, just to kind of clean it up. I mean, this isn't going to be pretty, but we can at least not show things we don't need to show. So how do we do all this? This is our result. If we go back over here, oh darn it, it's gone. Let me pull this back up. If we upload, we can see it all coming. We look at our result. There we go. And so we have a content type and we have an audio string that has a buffer. And after I did some looking, I found out that what we need to do is we can take that information using the buffer and the content type, and we can create a blob file type. Blob, yes, blob file type. And so let's create a blob, and we do that by doing new blob. And I totally Googled for all of this. So we need to give it the result dot audio stream dot buffer. And so this is the unsigned 8-bit array buffer. Finish typing. And then the second argument is we can give it the content type. So we can say the type is equal to the result dot content type. So these are all things that are being passed over in the result. So that way, if you decided to use an OG type, hopefully it would still work, and it would update that without us having to hard code that it's MP3. So we save that, and of course Prettier is going to throw things on multiple lines. And so this is our blob that represents the audio, and we're going to do the same trick where we use the URL.createObject URL to pass it in. So let's do this dot set state, and we're going to update the state of audio, or the audio attribute, and we're going to use our URL dot create object URL, and we're going to pass it the blob. Blob, not blog, every time. Cool. And so that will create a URL, update the state, which will cause our render function to go, show the audio player, and play it. And this is going to be fun for everybody around me who is still working. I'm going to turn my volume up. I'm going to make sure that it is not muted, because that would be anticlimactic. And let's see. Cinnamon Toast Crunch. We're going to open it, And we're going to cross our fingers and watch it go. So upload. Oh my gosh, did you guys hear that? I guess it's playing through my headphones. Does that mean it's playing on here? Oh, you can't hear it. I don't know how to make you hear this, but it's definitely a British guy saying Cinnamon Toast Crunch over and over again. Um, well, that was a little sad. I wish you could hear this. I don't know how to make it play that. Well, you'll have to take my word for it. Sorry. But we've done it. So if we go back over to our page of what we're doing, check, check, upload control, got it, recognition, yep, poly, yep, playing the audio using audio, and we did it. So I think we took about an hour, and if I wasn't explaining it all, it would have been a lot less time. But that's very simply how we can use those two services through Stitch to be able to upload a photo, pull the text from it, and then have the app speak it out loud, which is pretty cool. It was a lot of fun trying to figure out how all this works. And as you can see, it's not really a lot of code. Everything is inside this file, handle file upload. And we're setting state to manipulate what the page looks like. Yeah, so that was it. I will be uploading this to YouTube probably within the next few days, and there will be another blog post about this. But so here's some AWS services before reInvent. If you guys are going to be at reInvent in Las Vegas, I will be at the Stitch booth. I will be at the MongoDB booth. I will be running all around. Please come say hi. But other than that, thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time, whenever that is. Make sure you follow so you definitely are alerted once I go online. Bye.